Hello, everyone. I'm Dane.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast.
Today we will be discussing Book 1, Chapter 2 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 3 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books. I know this to be the best fantasy story ever written, and want to convince Dane here of that, but also share that love with you, our audience.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those who have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode contains extreme, emphasize extreme violence, and thus is not suitable for children.
Yeah, this is a pretty grisly one. Our show is listener-supported. If you would like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. I'm going to throw this out there. D&J's Epic Quest just posted their Steven Erikson interview after they finished House of Chains, and they're starting Midnight Tides, so you should go listen to it. It's pretty good.
All right. Check it out.
All right, Chapter 2, Part 3. This is immediately after Karsa shouldered the wall down.
Like an absolute unit.
Hoof spraying mud, Bairoth reined in. Karsa swung himself back onto Havoc, twisted the destrier round to face down the street. A square of pikemen approached at a trot, their long-pulled weapons wavering, iron blades glinting in the morning light. They were still 30 paces distant. A quarrel glanced off the rump of Bairoth's horse, coming from a nearby upper-floor window. From somewhere outside the wall came the sound of galloping horses. Bairoth grunted and said, "Our withdrawal shall be contested, war leader." Karsa said, "Withdrawal?" then laughed. He jutted his chin towards the advancing pikemen and said, "There can be no more than 30, and children with long spears are still children," Bairoth gilled. "Come, let us scatter them!" With a curse, Bairoth unlimbered his bear skull bolas. He said, "Precede me, then, Karsa Orlong, to hide my preparation." Baring his teeth in fierce pleasure, Karsa urged Havoc forward. The dogs fanned out to either side, Delum positioning himself on the war leader's far right. Ahead, the pikes slowly lowered, hovering at chest height as the square halted to plant their weapons. Upper floor windows on the street opened then, and faces appeared, looking down to witness what would come. Karsa bellowed, "Urgal!" as he drove Havoc into a charge. He shouted, "Witness!" Behind him, he heard Bairoth riding just as hard, and with that clash of sounds rose the whirring flow of the gray bear skull, round and round again. 10 paces from the readied pikes, and Bairoth roared. Karsa ducked low, pitching Havoc to the left even as he slowed the beast's savage charge. Something massive and hissing whipped past him, and Karsa twisted to see the huge bolus strike the square of soldiers. Deadly chaos. 3 of the 5 rose on the ground, piercing screams. Then the dogs were among them, followed by Delum's horse. So the last episode we were discussing the scale of these Teblor and their horses. If the Teblor are calling this bear skull massive, I can't even imagine how big this bear would be. I saw a giant sloth skeleton at the museum one time. It must have been 20 feet tall, and this bear must be as large as that easily.
I was going to say, I would think they would have to be, if you just did a 1-to-1 scale up for how big like a Kodiak grizzly is to us, then I wonder what this gray bear must be to the Teblor, if it's kind of a similar scale. I wonder if I've seen that skeleton. I came to that museum with you one time, didn't I?
Oh, yeah.
I think I've seen that. Yeah, I think you're right. Enormous.
The skull on it didn't seem that massive to me, but I remember the femur specifically. It was a thick boy. Like it was
quite robust.
Yeah, very robust. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was like, man, this thing was already large to Karsa, the bolus, and then to hit this group of people and take out 3 of 5 rows.
Some serious damage.
Wheeling his destrier once again, Karsa closed on the shattered square, arriving in time to be alongside Bairoth as the 2 Teblor rode into the press. Batting aside the occasional floundering pike, they slaughtered the children the dogs had not already taken down, in the passage of 20 heartbeats. Bairoth shouted, "War leader!" Dragging his bloodied sword from the last victim, Karsa turned at Bairoth's bellow. Another square of soldiers, this time flanked by crossbowmen, 50, perhaps 60 in all, at the street's far end.
Have you seen A Christmas Story?
Of course.
So he made an exclamation at some point in the movie where he goes, "Oh, fudge." But I didn't say fudge. This situation here is like a big uh-oh moment for me where I was kind of like, "Oh, fudge."
Yeah.
Only I didn't say
It was
fudge.
when he dropped the bolts, right?
Yes,
It was the
yes,
lug
yes,
nuts.
when they were changing the tire. That's right.
Yeah.
But I mean, 50, perhaps 60 in all. It's just like, zoinks. Like, whoa, that seems like a lot. This isn't like 10 or something.
It is escalating. It's a sequence of compounding events that are continually getting worse.
Yeah, definitely.
It feels like Risk of Rain a little bit, the game when it starts getting out of control and the waves start compounding on you and you're in a pickle.
Yeah, your back's against the wall. Right.
Yeah. Scowling, Karsa glanced back towards the gate. 20 mounted children, heavily armored in plate and chain, were slowly emerging through the dust. More on foot, some armed with short bows, others with double-bladed axes, swords, or javelins. Byroth shouted, "Lead me, war leader!" Karsa glared at Byroth and shouted, "And so I shall, Byroth Guild." He swung Havoc about and said, "This side passage, down to the shoreline. We shall ride around our pursuers. Tell me, Byroth Guild, have we slain enough children for you?" Byroth said, "Aye, Karsa Orlong." Karsa shouted, "Then follow!"
Is this a tactical retreat?
It sounds like it, doesn't it? If this is the end of the raid, what is the ultimate purpose?
Mm-hmm.
To come back with trophies and that's it? Bragging rights?
Yeah. At this point, it's like, all right, we've had enough. We're done. Let's just, let's get out of here. I don't know.
Literally 2 paragraphs ago, Byroth said, "Lead me." And he said, "I will." Then turn around, "Follow me here."
Yeah. I don't think we're done yet.
The side passage was a street almost as wide as the main one, and it led straight down to the lake. Dwellings, trader stores, and warehouses lined it. Shadowy figures were visible in windows, in doorways, and at alley mouths as the Teblor raiders thundered past. The street ended 20 paces before the shoreline. The intervening space, through which a wide, wood-planked loadway ran down to the docks and piers, was filled with heaps of detritus, dominant among them a huge pile of bleached bones, from which poles rose, skulls affixed to their tops. Teblor skulls.
And this was my second uh-oh moment. Not just soft little lowlanders after all, huh?
Oh, yeah. I think humanity's ability to work together is really exposing the difference between them and the Teblor. Organized society will generally beat these isolated tribes living off the land every time.
Mm.
There's an asymmetry in technology and organizational skills going on here. The only way this goes better is if the invaders come in far superior numbers and just overrun them.
Mm-hmm.
All those Teblor skulls, I wonder if the humans went up and hunted them or if the Teblor were killed raiding the town.
That's an interesting point.
Some of that may be answered later in this section as well.
Mm-hmm.
It is an interesting question as to how this started and then where it's at now, where they're coming from.
Yeah.
Amidst this stretch of rubbish, squalid huts and tents filled every clear patch, and scores of children had emerged from them, bristling with weapons, their rough clothing bedecked with Teblor charms and scalps, their hard eyes watching the warriors approach as they began readying long-handled axes, two-handed swords, thick-shafted halberds, whilst yet others strung robust, recurved bows and knocked over long, barbed arrows which they began to draw, taking swift aim. When I talk about technology, these are apparently specialized Teblor hunting weapons.
It seems that way. If the Teblor are as large comparatively to humans, then yeah, having to get all these long halberds, two-handed swords, everything with more range. A little dagger or a short sword ain't gonna cut it against these guys.
Yeah, the arrows seem to be more robust, almost harpoon-like.
Yeah.
Byroth's roar was half horror, half rage as he sent his destrier charging towards these silent, deadly children. Arrows flashed. Byroth's horse screamed, stumbled, then crashed to the ground. Byroth tumbled, his sword spinning away through the air as he struck, then broke through a sapling-walled hut. More arrows flew. Karsa shifted Havoc sharply, watched an arrow hiss past his thigh. Then he was among the first of the lowlanders. Bloodsword clashed against an axe's bronze-sheathed shaft, the impact tearing the weapon from the man's hands. Karsa's left hand shot out to intercept another axe as it swung towards Havoc's head. He plucked it from the man, sent it flying, then lunged forward the same hand to take the lowlander by the neck, lifting him clear as they continued on. A single, bone-crunching squeeze left the head lolling, the body twitching and spilling piss. Karsa flung the corpse away. Havoc's onward plunge was brought to a sudden halt. The destrier shrieked, slewed to one side, blood gushing from its mouth and nostrils, dragging with it a heavy pike, its iron head buried deep in the horse's chest. The beast stumbled, then, with a drunken weave, it began toppling. Karsa, screaming his fury, launched himself from the dying destrier's back. A sword point rose to meet him, but Karsa batted it aside. He landed atop at least 3 tumbling bodies, hearing bones snap beneath him as he rolled his way clear.
And Havoc goes down. Even though Sinnig kind of foreshadowed it back in Chapter 1, saying he would give him to Karsa for one final battle, I didn't think it would happen. But as we continue to get further into this battle, it looks like things are going a little sideways.
Yeah. R.I.P. Havoc. I would say he deserved better, but they're bred for this, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
You hate to see a beautiful animal go down, though.
Yeah, you do.
Without the mobility of this horse, Karsa's cooked.
That's a good point.
This was a force multiplier for him, and now he's on foot, and it's going to be much easier for him to get subdued by these children.
It's very true, because I guess sometimes you think about it as mobility only, but these horses, they're trampling people. They're biting, so it's like just another warrior, I guess, essentially.
Karsa has an elevated position on the horse, so he can chop down on people. It's harder to defend that way instead of being at ground level. And then, the kicks, the bites, stampeding things, it was like being in a vehicle.
Yeah. Well, I guess you think of like police on horseback and how they can control a crowd by just moving the horse into people, even though it's one person, but the horse itself is like like you say, a force multiplier. Exactly. Yeah.
Then Karsa was on his feet, bloodsword slashing across the face of a lowlander, ripping black-bearded jaw from skull. An edged weapon scored deep across his back. Spinning, Karsa swung his blade under the attacker's outstretched arms, chopped deep between ribs, jamming at the breastbone. He tugged fiercely, tearing his sword free, the dying lowlander's body cartwheeling past him. Heavy weapons, many of them bearing knotted Teblor fetishes, surrounded him, each striving to drink Urid blood. They fouled each other as often as not, yet Karsa was hard-pressed, blocking the others as he fought his way clear. He killed 2 of his attackers in the process. Now he heard another fight nearby, from where Bairoth had crashed into the hut, and, here and there, the snap and snarl of the dogs. His attackers had been silent until a moment ago. Now all were screaming in their gibbering tongue, their faces filled with alarm, as Karsa wheeled once more and, seeing more than a dozen before him, attacked. They scattered, revealing a half-crescent line of lowlanders with bows and crossbows. Strings thrummed. Searing pain along Karsa's neck, twin punches to his chest, another against his right thigh. Ignoring them all, Karsa charged the half-crescent.
I'm wondering here, did Karsa and Bairoth take a little blood oil, or are they just bloodlusted? Because, taking all these arrows and bolts, completely ignoring them, I mean, come on.
What are these arrows for ants?
These arrows have to be at least 3 times bigger than this.
I mean, that's what it feels like a little bit. They're just kind of like, pulls it out, throws it to the side, no big deal. They didn't take any blood oil that I recall. They did wave it in front of the horse's noses, got a little excited when they smelled it on the sword.
Mm-hmm.
But they are definitely bloodlusted. Adrenaline has to be through the roof for Karsa and Bairoth right now.
Yeah. I guess they get excited by this, so makes sense.
Well, again, you used to wrestle, and then the jiu-jitsu thing for me, when you're in it, sometimes somebody will accidentally knee you in the face or something, but you don't really feel it because you're so into what's happening. You'll feel it later, but in the moment, you're just keep going, right? And so I kind of equate it to that, where when you are so focused on these types of activities, it's even higher stakes because your life is on the line. I feel like your body's just not going to feel it until you have time to slow down and realize what's going on. Because there's so much sensory input going on, and your focus is such that you're not thinking about any type of pain, unless it's like really, really serious pain.
Excellent point, War Leader. Lead on.
I shall witness.
Witness.
More shouts, sudden pursuit from the ones who had scattered, but it was too late for that. Karsa's sword was a blur as he cut into the archers. Figures turning to run, dying, spinning away in floods of blood, skulls shattering. Karsa carved his way down the line and left a trail of 8 figures, some writhing and others still behind him by the time the first set of attackers reached him. He pivoted to meet them, laughing at the alarm in their tiny, wizened, dirt-smeared faces. Then he lunged into their midst once more. They broke, flinging weapons away, stumbling and scrambling in their panic. Karsa killed one after another until there were no more within reach of his blood sword. He straightened then. Where Bairoth had been fighting, 7 lowlander bodies lay in a rough circle, but of the Teblor warrior there was no sign. The screams of a dog continued from further up the street, and Karsa ran towards the sound. He passed the coral-studded corpses of the rest of the pack, though he did not see Na among them. They had killed a number of lowlanders before they had finally fallen. Looking up, he saw 30 paces down the street, Delum Thord. Near him his fallen horse, and another 15 paces beyond, a knot of villagers. Delum was shrieking. He had taken a dozen or more quarrels and arrows, and a javelin had been thrust right through his torso, just above the left hip. He had left a winding trail of blood behind him, yet still he crawled forward to where the villagers surrounded the 3-legged dog, beating it to death with walking sticks, hoes, and shovels. Wailing, Delum dragged himself on, the javelin scraping alongside him, blood streaming down the shaft. Even as Karsa began to run forward, a figure raced out from an alley mouth, coming up slightly behind Delum, a long-handled shovel in his hands. Lifting high, Karsa screamed a warning. Delum did not so much as turn, his eyes fixed on the now-dead 3-legged dog, as the shovel struck the back of his head. There was a loud crunch. The shovel pulled away, revealing a flat patch of shattered bone and twisted hair. Delum toppled forward and did not move.
This is a real shame. From how Delum was introduced to us in the beginning of this book, and then to the brain injury, and now this, getting hit from behind and killing him that way, terrible to see it.
This is one of those death scenes that would be incredibly impactful if done correctly. I agree, it's terrible. I'm also a bit torn in this situation because I am a human, and these are a different species, and I should be angry about this raid against my species. We've seen this raiding party isn't based on some moral principle. They're coming to cause trouble. On the flip side, the humans are encroaching on Teblor adjacent lands, and this is going to be a natural part of them expanding into an area that is not their territory. Either way, R.I.P. Delum. He couldn't even defend himself due to the brain damage. So that's, I think, probably the worst part of it for me, is he didn't even have a chance to defend himself here. He's just kind of brought into this by Karsa and Bairoth, and basically they knew he was going to die. Bairoth painted his face with a death mask, knowing something like this would happen.
Yeah. That's interesting. I hadn't even thought of that. I find myself siding with the Teblor. Like, I'm just following their story, and so, like, they're doing the thing. When you're right, in reality, I probably should be aligning with the humans, and not the ones coming.
Yeah, perspective's interesting in this case, because naturally, I care about what happens to the warriors perpetrating the raid, because we've been following through this book, but at the same time, they're obviously not good people.
Yeah. Yeah. Indeed.
Delum's slayer spun at Karsa's charge, an old man, his toothless mouth opening wide in sudden terror. Karsa's downward chop cut the man in half down to the hips. That's savage.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of, in Terminator 2, when the T-1000 gets cut in half at the end of the movie when they're in the foundry.
Yeah.
Arnold hits him with a pipe and it cuts him all the way down to his hips. He comes back from it naturally, I should say.
That's a very good pull right there. It sounds extremely close to that, yeah.
Tearing his blood sword free, Karsa plunged on, towards the dozen or so villagers still gathered around the pulped corpse of the 3-legged dog. They saw him and scattered. That was a tough one for me, too. That 3-legged dog getting beat down like that by the villagers.
Yeah. Well, they're just sitting there continuing on, too.
But then I'm like, okay, what would happen if, like, a pack of coyotes came in my backyard and attacked my kids or something? I'm doing the same thing. So I have to remember, as much as I don't like seeing that happen to this dog, what is the context around this situation?
Yeah, the perspective matters, huh?
10 paces beyond lay Na, leaving his own blood trail as, back legs dragging, he continued towards the body of his mate. He raised his head upon seeing Karsa, pleading eyes fixed on the war leaders. Bellowing, Karsa ran down 2 of the villagers and left their twitching corpses sprawled in the muddy street. He saw another, armed with a rust-pitted mattock, dart between 2 houses. The Teblor hesitated, then with a curse he swung about and moments later was crouched beside Na. A shattered hip. Again,
I guess the perspective coming into play, but still, the horses, the dogs, Delum, Like, this is all bad. Everything's bad here.
It has definitely fallen apart. The plan only worked up to the point where it was accurate, and it was just a farmhouse.
Yeah, exactly.
Karsa glanced up the street to see the pike-wielding soldiers closing at a jog. 3 mounted men rode in their wake, shouting out commands. A quick look towards the lakeside revealed more horsemen gathering, heads turned in his direction. Karsa lifted Na from the ground, tucking the beast under his left arm. Then he set off in pursuit of the mattock-wielding villager. Rotting vegetables crowded the narrow aisle between the 2 houses which, at the far end, opened out into a pair of corralled runs. As he emerged into the track between the 2 fence lines, he saw the man, still running, 20 paces ahead. Beyond the corrals was a shallow ditch carrying sewage down to the lake. The child had crossed it and was plunging into a tangle of young alders. There were more buildings beyond it, either barns or warehouses. Karsa raced after him, leaping across the ditch, the hunting dog still under his arm. The jostling was giving it great pain, the Teblor knew. He contemplated slitting its throat. The child entered a barn, still carrying his mattock. Following, Karsa ducked low as he plunged through the side doorway. Sudden gloom. There were no beasts in the stalls. The straw, still piled high, looked old and damp. A large fishing boat commanded the wide center aisle, flipped over and resting on wooden horses. Double sliding doors to the left, one of them slightly pushed back. The ropes from the handle gently swinging back and forth. Karsa found the last, darkest stall, where he set Na down on the straw. He whispered, "I shall return to you, my friend. Failing that, find a way to heal, then journey home. Home among the Urid." The Teblor cut a thong of leather from his armor strappings. He tore from his belt bag a handful of bronze sigils bearing the tribal signs, then strung the thong through them. None hung loose, and so would make no sound. He tied the makeshift collar around Na's thick, muscled neck. Then he laid one hand lightly upon the dog's shattered hip and closed his eyes and said, "I gift this beast the soul of the Teblor, the heart of the Urid. Urigal, hear me. Heal this great fighter, then send him home. For now, bold Urigal, hide him." He withdrew his hand and opened his eyes. The beast looked up at him calmly. He said, "Make fierce your long life, Na. We will meet again. This I vow upon the blood of all the children I have slain this day." Shifting his grip on his blood sword, Karsa turned away and departed the stall without another backward glance. He padded towards the sliding door, looked out. A warehouse stood opposite, high-ceilinged, with a loading loft beneath its slate-tiled roof. From within the building came the sounds of bolts and bars dropping into place. Smiling, Karsa darted across to where the loading chains dangled from pulleys. His eyes on the doorless loft platform high overhead. As he prepared to sling his sword back over his shoulder, he saw with a start that he was festooned with arrows and quarrels, and realized for the first time that much of the blood sheathing his body was his own. Scowling, he pulled the darts out. So, on the point of the scale of these things, he's thinking of them as darts. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, massive boy.
There was more blood, particularly from his right thigh and the 2 wounds in his chest. A long arrow in his back had buried its barbed head deep into muscle. He attempted to drag the arrow free, but the pain that resulted came close to making him faint. He settled for snapping the shaft just behind the iron head, and this effort alone left him chilled and sweating.
I'm getting the image that he's looking a little bit like a porcupine right now.
I see it as Boromir in Lord of the Rings at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring when he's just pin-cushioned with those arrows. I guess the scale's off there because those were huge arrows compared to his size. These are probably more like in Indiana Jones where those little darts at the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark when the guy's back. Yeah. Something about that.
That Boromir reference is probably a little closer. In my head, I'm thinking that he's got a lot more in, but in this section, it doesn't sound like he's got 40 or 50 of them in. It's probably a little bit less.
I thought it did say 12, though, and 12 would look like a lot.
It's making it sound like there's fewer, but I don't know. That was just the first thing that popped into my head.
Distant shouts alerted him to a slowly closing cordon of soldiers and townfolk, all hunting him. Karsa closed his hands around the chains, then began climbing. Every time he lifted his left arm, his back flashed with agony. But it had been the flat of the mattock's blade that had felled Na. A 2-handed blow from behind. The attack of a coward. Nothing else mattered. He swung himself onto the platform's dusty floorboards, padded silently away from the opening as he drew his sword once more. I'm going to pause here for a second. When they were approaching this town, what were the people doing that they rode down and they were cut down from behind? They're running away from Karsa and Byron.
Oh, yeah.
So for him to say that this attack was the attack of a coward while he's running people down from behind seems a little like he's not looking upon things equally.
Hypocritical there.
This is where I start thinking, man, everything is so skewed to their perspective and how they view themselves versus the world. If it happens to them, it's cowardly. But if they do it to somebody else, we're rating them, so it's okay, I guess.
Yeah, for the glory.
For the glory of the Teblor. He could hear breathing, harsh and ragged, below. Low whimpering between gasps. A voice praying to whatever gods the child worshipped. Karsa made his way towards the gaping hole in the center of the platform, careful to keep his moccasins from dragging, lest sawdust drift down from between the floorboards. He came to the edge and looked down.
This is still pretty incredible how quietly Karsa is able to move, considering now that we know how big he is.
Yeah, all that hunting in the forest, I imagine they're as skilled as indigenous forest-dwelling tribes. You know how they can pretty much move silently through the forest. Now, in this case, I guess he's on a walkway or a gantry, and so I would think that it would be creaking under his weight, maybe.
That's what I was thinking. Once indoors, maybe that soft walk. Although, I will say my wife says I walk incredibly softly in the house, where she is like an elephant stomping through the house.
It's the inverse for us. You can hear me from 20 feet away. The fool was directly beneath him, crouched down, trembling, the mattock held ready as he faced the barred doors. He had soiled himself in terror. Karsa carefully reversed grip on his sword, held it point downward, then dropped from the ledge. The sword's tip entered atop the man's pate, the blade driving down through bone and brain. As Karsa's full weight impacted the warehouse floor, there was a massive splintering sound, and Teblor and victim both plunged through, down into a cellar. Shattered floorboards crashed down around them. The cellar was deep, almost Karsa's height, stinking of salted fish, yet empty. Stunned by the fall, Karsa feebly groped for his sword, but he could not find it. He managed to raise his head slightly, and saw that something was sticking out of his chest, a red shard of splintered wood. He bemusedly realized, impaled. His hand continued searching for his sword, though he could not otherwise move, but found only wood and fish scales, the latter greasy with salt and sticking to his fingertips. He heard the sound of boots from above. Blinking, Karsa stared up as a ring of helmed faces slowly swam into view. Then another child's face appeared, unhelmed, his brow marked in a tribal tattoo, the expression beneath it strangely sympathetic. There was a lot of conversation, hot with anger. Then the tattooed child gestured and everyone fell silent. In the Sunid dialect of the Teblor, the man said, "Should you die down there, warrior, at least you'll keep for a time." Karsa sought to rise once more, but the shaft of wood held him fast. He bared his teeth in a grimace.
These Teblor, getting impaled through the chest isn't even enough to do him in. And what's funny to me, too, I just thought about this, is the arrowhead in his back almost makes him faint. He's laying here impaled, and he's just kind of like, oh, God, I'm stuck. That's the impression I get.
I guess part of it is the extraction of the arrow, because I think also when they pull him off of this, he passes out, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe it's like if the knife's in, it's there, but once you pull it out, it's going to get a lot worse.
Yeah.
I do look forward to hearing more about their biology because they seem so much more resilient than humans. Something's going on there. And I also think it's a bit ironic that revenge on the man that hurt Na is what got him here. And it reminds me a bit of that situation in Heat, where Robert De Niro's character just had to go get the Waingro guy, get revenge on him. He could have gotten away with everything, but then just going back because he couldn't let it go, gets killed. Was it worth the revenge here, given you just got captured, where you could have outpaced these people likely and gotten into the forest or something and gotten away?
Yeah, true. I mean, I wonder what he thought if the raid is over at that point. I don't know. But yeah, going back in a second time when you know you should have just gotten out. Yeah, and you're right. Taking revenge for Na, and he keeps talking about Na, but not Delim. It's kind of crazy.
That's interesting.
Like, he doesn't mention Delim at all.
He already killed the guy that killed Delim, though. Like that was the T-1000 guy.
That's true. That's true.
The T-1000.
Yeah. So that wrong has been righted.
Yeah. Yeah. We need to get even for what you did to my dog. Meanwhile, he probably killed half this guy's family throughout this raid.
Oh, yeah.
The child asked, "What is your name, Teblor?" Karsa said, "I am Karsa Orlong, grandson of Palk." The child asked. Palk, the Urid who visited centuries ago? Karsa said, to slay scores of children. The man's nod was serious as he interjected. Children, yes. It makes sense for your kind to call us that. But Palk killed no one, not at first. He came down from the pass, half-starved and fevered. The first farmers who'd settled here took him in, nourished him back to health. It was only then that he murdered them all and fled. Well, not all. A girl escaped, made her way back along the lake's south shore to Orbs, and told the detachment there, told them everything they needed to know about the Teblor. Since that time, of course, the Sunid slaves have told us even more. You are Urid. We've not reached your tribe. You've had no bounty hunters as yet, but you will. Within a century, I'd hazard, there will be no more Teblor in the fastness of Lateron Plateau. The only Teblor would be the ones branded and in chains, plying the nets on the fishing boats as the Sunid now do. Tell me, Karsa, do you recognize me? Karsa said, you are the one who escaped us above the pass, who came too late to warn his fellow children, who, I know now, is full of lies. Your tiny voice insults the Teblor tongue. It hurts my ears.
There's an awful lot in that little section. He knows Palk, and knows again a less flattering version of the tale that he's been telling.
The first thing I thought of was hundreds of years have passed. The U.S. population has increased hundreds of millions in that time frame, and not to mention the world population. So think about how fast humans are capable of reproducing. A significant amount of growth has happened in this area in that time frame. That goes back to Byroth asking, how long has it been since Palk was here?
Yeah, an important question that just was like, it doesn't matter, we're going in.
Second, I wonder at why Palk has tried to get Karsa to go on this raid. Karsa was bound to find out the truth. Maybe Palk is kind of dumb.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, maybe he's just an idiot.
Yeah, you would think he's going to find out. How could you not? But maybe he thinks that children are so short-lived that they might have forgotten, but they're obviously passing the stories on just the way the Urid do. Maybe not so smart after all. And Sunid slaves. How had the lowlanders been able to enslave Teblor, as well as bounty hunters potentially coming for the Urid?
Special weapons and tactics, Dane. They have Malazan SWAT teams.
SWAT teams.
Well, I mean, think of it, though. Okay, so those specialized tools, that's what's going on there, is they have developed methodology for subduing Teblor. And the Teblor are not progressing technologically or apparently through tactics. They're just stuck where they are. In that scenario, they're going to lose.
I'm still a little surprised that if the Sunid were the ones who were living closest to this village and everything that's now a town, it's not just 2 or 3 warriors, you have the whole village. So I'm kind of surprised that they would still be able to do it. But you're right, I guess over enough time, better tools for the job.
And the tactics to go along with them.
Yeah, and the tactics. And he's the one who got away from up above on Bone Pass. Like, there's a lot going on here.
He's the Baba Yaga of this story. He's the John Wick of these bounty hunters, man. I told you he was going to be a problem.
Yeah.
He is able to escape them in more or less their own territory. That was really impressive in and of itself. Then he survives and makes it way through all that stuff back on his own. So this guy obviously is a pretty scrappy dude that can survive. He's a survivor for sure.
Yeah.
So he had asked Karsa if he recognized him, and then Karsa popped off. The man smiled and said, too bad. You should reconsider in any case, warrior, for I am all that stands between your living or dying, assuming you don't die of your wounds first. Of course, you Teblor are uncommonly tough, as my companions have just been reminded, to their dismay. I see no blood frothing your lips, which is a good sign. And rather astonishing, since you've 4 lungs, while we have 2. The 4 lungs! So that makes me think, these Teblor sound like they have the anatomy of Space Marines in Warhammer 40k. They have heightened healing, extra organs, super size. It does make me wonder if Mr. Erikson was in some way inspired by that biology to make the Teblor that way.
Yeah, give them that gene seed. I guess one piece to the question of what kind of biology they have, you asked earlier, 4 lungs. I'd like to see what else they've got.
Another figure had appeared and now spoke to the tattooed man in stentorian tones, to which he simply shrugged, then called down, Karsa Orlong of the Urid, soldiers are about to descend, to tie ropes to your limbs so you can be lifted out. It seems you're lying on what's left of the town's factor, which has somewhat abated the anger up here, since he was not a well-liked man. I would suggest, if you wish to live, that you not resist the war leader's nervous volunteers. So I take that man that was just crushed. He was a pseudo-mayoral type when I hear factor.
Mm-hmm.
What is the mayor doing getting down in the streets with these rabid dogs and Teblor invaders?
That's interesting. Normally they would be the ones who are staying at arm's distance from everything. You go and handle this. I'm not getting my hands dirty.
Maybe he's a lead from the front type of guy?
Yeah. Even though they don't like him, I guess. I don't know.
He seemed not that brave when it came down to it.
Yeah. When you mess yourself in fear, didn't think about that.
Yeah. Karsa watched as 4 soldiers were slowly lowered down on ropes. He made no effort to resist as they roughly bound his wrists, ankles, and upper arms, for the truth was, he was incapable of doing so. The soldiers were quickly dragged back up. Then the ropes were drawn taut, and Karsa was steadily lifted. He watched the shaft of splintered wood slowly withdrawing from his chest. It had entered high, just above the right shoulder blade, through muscles, reappearing just to the right of his clavicle on that side. As he was pulled free, pain overwhelmed him.
I think you already know this, but my hatred of collarbone injuries or anything in that vicinity, this is making my skin crawl. Like, I'm shuddering. I hate it.
That's what's crazy is never had a collarbone injury, me or my brother, but this year both of us got severe collarbone injuries. In the same year.
Gee, yuck.
Our whole lives, and then this is the year, and then we're talking about this on the podcast.
Yeah, a confluence. Ugh.
A hand was then slapping him awake. Karsa opened his eyes. He was lying on the warehouse floor, faces crowding him on all sides. So he did pass out from that. Similar to the arrow, the pain was from the extraction.
Yeah, okay.
Everyone seemed to be speaking to him at once in their thin, weedy tongue. And though he could not understand the words, raw hatred rode the tone, and Karsa knew he was being cursed in the name of scores of lowlander gods, spirits, and moldering ancestors. The thought pleased him, and he smiled. The soldiers flinched back as one. The tattooed lowlander, whose hand had awakened him, was crouched down at Karsa's side. He muttered, "Hood's breath. Are all Urid like you, or are you the one the priest spoke of? The one who stalked their dreams like Hood's own knight? Ah, well, it doesn't matter. I suppose, for it seems their fears were unfounded. Look at you, half dead, with the whole town eager to see you and your companion flayed alive. There's not a family to be found not in mourning, thanks to you. Grasp the world by the throat? Not likely. You'll need Opan's luck to live out the hour." The broken arrow shaft had been driven deeper into Karsa's back with the fall, gouging into the bone of his shoulder blade. Blood was spreading out on the floorboards beneath him. There was a commotion as a new lowlander arrived, this one tall for his kind, thin with a severe weather-lined face. He was dressed in shimmering clothes, deep blue and trimmed with gold thread sewn into intricate patterns. The guard spoke to him at length, though the man himself said nothing, nor did his expression change. When the guard was finished, the newcomer nodded, then gestured with one hand and turned away. The guard looked down at Karsa once more and said, "That was Master Silgar, the man I work for, most of the time. He believes you will survive your wounds, Karsa Orlong, and so has prepared for you a lesson of sorts." The man straightened and said something to the soldiers. There followed a brief argument, which concluded with an indifferent shrug from one of the soldiers. Karsa's limbs were lifted once more, 2 lowlanders to each, the men straining to hold him as they carried him to the warehouse doors. The blood dripping down from his wounds was slowing, pain retreating behind a dull lassitude in the Teblor's mind. He stared up at blue sky as the soldiers carried him to the center of the street, the sound of a crowd on all sides. They set him down, propped up against a cartwheel, and Karsa saw before him Byroth Guild. He had been tied to a much larger spoked wheel, which itself rested against support poles. The huge warrior was a mass of wounds. A spear had been driven into his mouth, exiting just below his left ear, leaving the lower jaw shattered. Bone gleamed red amidst torn flesh. The stubs of deep-driven quarrels crowded his torso, but his eyes were sharp as they met Karsa's own. That's a horrific image. The jaw injury in particular always gets me.
He certainly seems to have taken the worst of the beaten here through this town. I mean, I guess Karsa got impaled, but it sounds like the description of Byroth, he's worse for wear.
Villagers filled the street, held back by a cordon of soldiers. Angry shouts and curses filled the air, punctuated every now and then by wails of grief. The guard positioned himself between Karsa and Byroth, his expression mockingly thoughtful. Then he turned to Karsa and said, "Your comrade here will tell us nothing of the Urid. We would know the numbers of warriors, the number and location of villages. We would know more of the Phalid as well, who are said to be your match in ferocity. but he says nothing.
Here the Phalid get mentioned again, and the last time I heard them get brought up, it was Karsa and Delim, and they were reading the runes back in the cave. In Chapter 2, Delim started to say something about the Phalid and the Lanid, and Karsa cut him off, and I'd like to know more about them as well.
Are they as ferocious as the Urid or more weak like the Sunid? I think the bounty hunter guy just said that they're supposed to be a match for their ferocity. So maybe the Urid wouldn't have raided them as much because it's easier to pick on the Sunid.
Yeah, get the low-hanging fruit.
It sounds like the tribes became more and more isolated as time went on.
Yeah, a little bit passive too, if they just weren't doing it much.
And even this raid was frowned upon by the elders, so they were discouraging them.
They didn't give it the blessing, you're right about that.
Karsa bared his teeth and said, I, Karsa Orlong, invite you to send 1,000 of your warriors to wage war among the Urid. None shall return, but the trophies will remain with us. Send 2,000, it matters not. The guard smiled and said, You will answer our questions then, Karsa Orlong? Karsa said, I will, for such words will avail you not. The guard said, Excellent, then gestured with one hand. A lowlander stepped up to Byroth Guild, drawing his sword. Byroth sneered at Karsa. He snarled, the sound a mangled roar that Karsa nevertheless understood. Lead me, war leader! The sword slashed through Byroth Guild's neck. Blood sprayed, the huge warrior's head flopping back, then rolling from his shoulder to land with a heavy thump on the ground.
I went absolutely slack-jawed reading this. First, that Karsa was so willing to talk surprised the hell out of me. And second, that everything we've seen these two go through, and that Byroth has just been dispatched so unceremoniously, and that's the end. I couldn't believe it.
It does seem very uncharacteristic of Karsa to be so amenable to telling them what's going on with the Teblor tribes. I guess he's not as one-dimensional as we thought. He doesn't make decisions like I would assume he would in some cases. He's challenged our perceptions of him a couple times so far.
That's true. Still surprised.
On the topic of losing both of his companions, I really want to see the longer-term impacts of this on him psychologically, because for now, it doesn't seem like he's really reacting to it as you would expect.
Yeah, he's a bit indifferent, isn't he?
Yeah, but at the same time, he was kind of treating them like crap anyway to begin with, so we are unclear on how he viewed them truly. So over time, hopefully we get a better idea of how he's processing this situation. A savage, gleeful roar erupted from the villagers. The guard approached Karsa and said, Delighted to hear that you will cooperate. Doing so buys you your life. Master Stilgar will add you to his herd of slaves once you've told us all you know. I don't think you will be joining the Sunid out on the lake, however. No hauling of nets for you, Karsa Orlong, I'm afraid. He turned as a heavily armored soldier appeared. He said, Ah, here's the Malazan captain. Ill luck, Karsa Orlong, that you should have timed your attack to coincide with the arrival of a Malazan company on its way to Betris. Now then, assuming the captain has no objections, shall we begin the questioning?
Malazans? Up to this point, I had kind of forgotten we were even in the same world. Ill luck indeed, though. It also makes me wonder what would have happened to this town had there been no Malazan troops. Maybe they would have just completely steamrolled them without having actual military.
They might have done a considerable amount of damage until the SWAT team showed up. Because I think they are actually professional Teblor hunters. So this goes back to my question of where did those skulls come from? It sounds like there may have been raiding initially, but at some point they decided, no, we got to go deal with this problem. And then they specialized their tactics and the weapons they're using, and then they went and started hunting them down.
Excellent point. I did forget about that.
All right, we're going to stop there, and we'll continue the chapter next week. For standout moments.
This crazy battle. We lose basically all the members of the war party. Delim, Byroth, Havoc, almost all the dogs.
The bear skull absolutely flattening three ranks of the human formation, that was a really memorable moment for me. And just thinking of the scale of that bear skull is something that I like to contemplate in comparison to the humans.
It's interesting. You've mentioned it now, and I still have never considered it as big. Like, as I'm reading through it, I'm kind of, again, reading fast and all that. But you're right. I mean, it has to. It has to just be massive to do that kind of damage. Incredible.
The other image that really stuck out to me is all the Teblor skulls stuck on the pikes and the pile of bones. That would be really cool to film that scene of them realizing what's actually happening here.
Yeah, an ominous warning.
Oh, yeah, definitely. The humans developing the weapons specialize in taking down the Teblor and their horses. That was an interesting addition as well. Another big escalation point.
Oh, yeah.
And then for me, it was the brutal deaths of Delim Thord and Byroth Guild. I really want to see how this affects him mentally in the long term, how he processes the deaths, whether he is narcissistic, callous, whether he even cares. I just want to know more about how he thinks about that.
Yeah, because he certainly seems completely ambivalent at this point. It seemed the one that broke him up the most was the dog.
Yeah.
The other thing that stood out was the amount of damage that Karsa took. I guess Byroth as well before he was dispatched.
It's those Teblor Space Marine hybrid genetics. I'll tell you what, man. What if the craziest fan theory was like this is a Primarch's world?
Oh,
in the Warhammer 40K universe, and Chaos is like the Void? Dude, that would be some crazy, because Event Horizon, they've said that theoretically they wrote it with Warhammer in mind. Like, it's not directly linked to it, but like the spaceship goes to the Void is what they've said. And they were inspired by Warhammer. So that would be just insane.
You get that feeling from him, or even the Custodes, just like a cut above other ones or something. But
this bounty hunter guy, the Baba Yaga,
yeah.
Curious what happens with him, because he seems like a very clever, smart guy.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be playing Karsa like a fiddle right now.
Yeah, a little bit slippery. He's got some lip on him too. Doesn't mind talking back. I guess it's easier when Karsa's impaled. Definitely a survivor, you're right. More evidence that Polk was lying about this whole raid. It's very surprising, these little nuggets that just keep getting dropped about he's full of BS the whole time.
He was a real piece of crap, apparently. They nursed him back to health, then he just murders all of them as a thank you. And then he comes back and lies and poisons the mind of his grandson against his own father.
Yeah. Talk about cowardly, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's only cowardly if it's a human doing it.
Yeah.
I'm still wondering at Polk's motivations for getting Karsa inspired to go on this raid.
Yeah.
Why would you? Knowing that you did all of this stuff and Karsa's going to find out potentially. I don't understand the motivation from Polk's perspective, unless he's just a complete moron.
The conversation between him and Sinig always sounded like he did not want anybody to surpass his deeds. That was the impression that I got from him. It's like, you always will live in my shadow. But you're right. Coming to these realizations that he got to the Rathid and begged them to pass through the lands. He got to the farmstead and was almost dying. You would certainly have to think that by pushing Karsa, all of his BS would just unravel.
We'll never know, I guess.
I guess not. The Malazan army showing up was a big surprise. As I said, I completely forgot that we were, we were in the same place. But I wonder if we'll start to see some familiar names showing up.
Great job today, Dane.
Good job, Kamraun.
Thank you. You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
I did have one final thought, a question, I guess. I'm interested to know more in regards to these different Teblor tribes and how the Sunid became slaves, the Phalid get brought up, and as though the lowlanders already know about them, but we don't know. And even Karsa says he thinks, would we flee into the laps of the Phalid? No. So I get the impression that he also knows more about them. I hope it's something we get to know more about or get some more information on later.
I agree with you. This is one of those scenarios where it's an interesting culture. I would like to know more about the tribes individually. There is the Witness trilogy that may dive more into Teblor stuff. I don't know. I haven't read the first book yet. Billy had. He'd be able to tell us if it does. He's about to release the second book next year, I think, and then the third book is going to take him probably a couple more years. So it's going to be at least 4 years before I read that trilogy.
Okay.
All right, thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. See you next week.